Hey, my name is Ryan and welcome to Data Points. I'm the president of Pinpoint Guam, and today we're going to be speaking with former Senator Will Castro. Not only is he a former senator and also has been on several school boards, working with DOE, the Office of Technology, and various other interests, intergovernment. He's now the principal down at a charter school in Agate. And the reason I asked him to come in is because we were having a conversation recently around the education system. And he had some insight that I think he'd like to share with you, and he's going to share it with you on the podcast. Thanks for liking, sharing, and subscribing all our content and joining us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Hey, welcome to Data Points. My name is Ryan. I'm the president of Pinpoint Guam, and I'm here with former Senator Will Castro, the principal of Career Tech Academy.
It is Career Tech High Academy Charter School on the beautiful Hogget Bay.
Nice. And notwithstanding your location, one of the reasons that I asked you here today is because, effectively we've been having conversations around how we got to where we are. And for me, that was a mission of attainable housing, but now it's become so much more. And I just want to keep following the thread. And one of the threads for me is I'm a technology business, and I'm also in other industries, and I've been in the real estate industry. I've hired people. I've been in that position for at least 13 years now, and just what I see is the marketplace is improving in terms of the candidates that are coming forward and presenting themselves for hire, and there are these gaps, and it doesn't seem like the education system is hitting the mark. And one of the things that frustrates me, because I have some insight a little bit, enough to make me dangerous into the educational system, is like the idea of social promotion and those concepts that kind of push everything forward. So when you have these people exiting the system, they don't have any self-efficacy, they don't have any really direction, and they don't have any hard skills or soft skills that will help them get a foothold. And then you have this entitlement mentality that just becomes pervasive. So talk to me about that, right?
Sure.
Talk to me about the education system, where you think it's going, and why you think your approach is better.
Sure. So first of all, it's important to recall that we're coming out of a post-COVID era, and that has significantly impacted that generation and everyone else, frankly. You're going to see a lot of challenges in educational systems across the spectrum throughout the country and throughout the rest of the world. Charters and publics, privates, homeschools, there are no exception. We're struggling with things like absenteeism and a lot of interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence issues that are right in front of us because of that phenomena that has set us back, in my opinion, as a society. So how do you deal with it? I don't necessarily think my approach is better. I think we offer a unique program down there at Career Tech, and the curriculum is secondary to our philosophy in terms of being engaging with our kids. Anyone who goes down there will see that we take a very hands-on approach. We're vested. There are only 200 kids, and on any given day, like I told you, consistent with what other schools are seeing, you probably have about 150 on a good day, 120, sometimes 100. And it hurts. It hurts they don't come. But when they do, we're very grateful, and we know them all by name. And for many of them, we know their parents. And for almost all of them, we are their family between 7:30 and 3:30.
I see.
And so we do not take that for granted. They're our students, but they're also our ward. They're like our sons and daughters. And so addressing the issue of educational gaps, that's a complex issue to deconstruct. But let's take it even just from the core curriculum: English, math, science, social studies. When you have kids working online or from home or not working at all, it sets them back. We're seeing a consistent problem with aptitude in terms of grades and subject matter competency, in terms of grade level competency. And so we just have to build and keep rebuilding, whatever that means to each class, to each teacher. It doesn't help when the home front isn't reinforcing the skills. And I'm not just talking academics. A lot of these things go back. They're time tested. They've plagued every generation. And we're talking about the cycle of poverty of thinking and nurturing your child. and this is not just the COVID generation or Generation X, it's every generation. When you have a failed household, all the things that come with it fall on people like us, the educators, police, the nurses, everyone who makes this society move forward. So we have a core curriculum. That's not our focus. We're a career and technical education pathway high school. But I think what makes us really unique, aside from being on a beach, I mean, that's pretty cool too.
For sure. PE must be fun.
Yeah, tell me about it. So we have canoes and all kinds of stuff. So we're very excited. We're getting dive certified with some students.
Oh, that's fire.
But it's cool because charters offer a unique advantage. We're extremely flexible. We have full control over our curriculum and who we hire. I have a master navigator who doesn't have a diploma or a degree, a college degree. And I brought this up to the Guam Legislature when they had what I've considered to be an extreme measure on procurement. Who's on this panel that can contra me or affirm whether my desire and my action to hire a traditional navigator who has no Western American credential is an appropriate fit for a $60,000 a year job? Who has received that thousands and thousands of years of education on that panel, especially a legislative panel, and what more, a charter school council made up of volunteers. I value our senators' desire to have oversight. That is fun. That's foundational. It's fundamental to this Western society. But to fully control a $10,000 procurement, which in my mind, I think they want to include hiring, is ludicrous. It goes back to your first point when we talked over the phone about coming here to talk to you. It goes back to why certain state systems like DOE don't function as efficiently and effectively as we would like them to. So the hiring process and the flexibility in hiring and in procuring and in making changes on a dime. I added a dive certification. All of my varsity level paddlers will be lifeguard certified. Well, let me rephrase that. We hope they are. I hope all my sons and daughters pass, but they'll all be availed the privilege to have lifeguard certification. And I decided that yesterday, for example, and that's the kind of flexibility we have. I'm going to open up another extension campus, and not just on Guahan, but the plan is to go to different islands. And I also would like to go in the post-secondary institution market and down to the 8th grade academy market, because we're seeing a really interesting thing take hold at Career Tech, where we're attracting a lot of athletes, right? Yeah. For such a small school, we have 200 kids. I think we probably have the highest amount of scholar athletes per capita. I mean, arguably against some of the smaller parochial schools, but we can have that discussion on why private schools, like parochial schools, like FD and St. John's, are very competitive both in academics and sports. But when you look at that compared to charters and DOE, we're not dealing with the same beast, and we can talk about that further.
So to qualify that, right, you've been with St. John's, various. You've been with DOE, you've been with the Office of Technology. So you have varied experience in the systems and structures that kind of got you to the place you are in terms of your vision and your outlook in terms of the market. On the charter school model, what does it look like in terms of consistency of curriculum? Because what I hear you say is that you're very agile and you can respond to what the market wants, right? And
that's correct.
The idea is you can step outside the box, because I see the value in your master navigator, because that's cultural preservation. Sure. And then, we were talking about GVB looking for a marketing plan. Well, who can tell that story other than a master navigator? The story of how, and just, think of an experience where it's like a planetarium experience and you're under the stars, and the master navigator is telling the story like Moana style, how you got from point A to point B, right? I'm not charging for this, but it wouldn't happen unless you paid that guy $60,000
or whatever it costs.
And people would never pursue that unless there was some kind of economic, or there's passion. But of course, people need to monetize it.
Absolutely, and striking the balance between an ROI and what's good for humanity is a difficult one. Mm-hmm. When people think traditional seafaring navigation pathway, the first thing that comes to mind is, now how can I get a job with that? Yes. You're not too far from the truth when they're talking about memorizing the star chart. They did that. They do that. It's part of their curriculum. As a matter of fact, the former student memorized it. And believe it or not, he's actually on the spectrum. But our students demonstrate that kind of subject matter mastery, right? But when at the end of the day, you're going to ask yourself, what kind of job does that come down to? Am I going to surf? Am I going to sail? But you get professional educators and folks who can bridge the vision with that reality, the need to preserve who we are, right? With modern sailing navigation techniques. We had a merchant mariner program teaching kids how to swim and survive in the water. That's although ancient, there's a modern credential to that.
I agree.
And so many applications across what we would consider the Western model of education: science, social studies, math, etc.
I've been, just my personal confession, I've been searching for someone to teach my kids to navigate with a compass, and a map, like a grid map. Because if you think about like the Mawara experience, when you lose grid, when you lose digital, like who has those skills to survive in the world? And that's a skill that manifests in terms of, if I knew how to navigate by the stars, I can find my way to Rhoda if I need to. And theoretically I can find where water is, basics, those kinds of things I need. We're so far away from the place where we had to do that. But just in terms of seeing how quickly we're so digital and how quickly it can shift, inherent knowledge of that I think is important.
I do. I think it's invaluable. Our indigeneity is evaporating. I mean, you read about it in the news all the time. If we lose our language and our culture, then we lose our uniqueness. And perhaps the only thing we'll have left is the fact that we're uniquely located on this rock called Guam. And I'm very passionate about the preservation of our Chamorro language and culture. And I look forward to one day contributing back in other ways beyond the classroom, back onto the floor, for example. I will conduct a lot of my proceedings in Chamorro, and I will engage in our national language and in our indigenous tongue. So, those are things near and dear to my heart that may not drive career tech necessarily, but it's part of that fabric. And it's not just mine. It's the founders, Steve McManus and Andresina. They're bought into the preservation of our indigenous cultures. As a matter of fact, here's something kind of cool. So, the emphasis is on Chamorro language and culture from Guam standpoint. But I modified that in collaboration with folks like Vince Regis and other practitioners of our languages. And there's an indigenous studies program, not a Chamorro studies program at Career Tech. We have Chamorro language, but it's an indigenous studies program that I'm developing. I'll tell you why. The master navigator is not Chamorro. Okay, he comes from one of the outlying islands of the Federated States of Micronesia, if I'm not mistaken, Satawal and Pulawat, places like that. We have Marshallese, we have Pohnpeians. They're indigenous, and I want to fully recognize, acknowledge, and help them also come into appreciation of their language, culture, and histories, right? So this is a really nice opportunity for us to help them embrace who they are as a native islander, as an indigenous person also.
I agreed. And one of the things that I think is so great about being from this area, this region, you do have that sense of place, right? And the diaspora, right? People lose that, and that's why they're always latching in. That's why we sell so many Sanahis, absolutely people who don't live here, right? Because that connection to place is unique. And so, can you talk about just going back to my question? Okay, you're getting a lot of the tech side, right? But what about the other skills that you need, like math, science, social studies?
Sure. So I'd say, aside from the career pathways of construction and some technology, like cybersecurity, I like to pride ourselves on developing that interpersonal, that psychosocial dimension of the child, or in this case, the young adults. They don't like to be called kids, even though they know very well that they're my kids, sons and daughters. It's really interesting. Although they're practically men and women, or some of them are huge men and women, and I just can't stop and think that they're actually kids. They're like my own biological child. Anyway, so to your question, we have something called CHIC Fridays, where we engage in enrichment opportunities. They get to go in the water. They get to get into their clubs. We had a chess club. A gaming club. We have a gaming club. There's an organization called MSA, Micronesian Student Alliance, and it's not that much different than what we experienced in high school. I don't know where you went to school, but at my school we had a couple orgs. There's a Chamorro club. In my daughter's school, there's a Mariana's club, and so we allow a great percentage of their Fridays to focus around a lot of that interpersonal interaction with one another, the ability to cope and to deal with these peer pressures and anxieties among themselves. That's a very important part I believe, in the development of this individual before they go into the workforce. How do you handle that kind of people not agreeing with you without losing your top, right? Or throwing hands, I guess is the term, right? Actually fighting, and to be able to express your thoughts. Because a lot of us, even in our own culture, we try to save face. And in the spirit of Inafat Malik, we try to not embarrass someone. But it is important at the same time to express your feelings that you don't agree with something in a vehemently but acceptable way if you're that passionate about it. So back to math, we're so fortunate to have a really good math teacher. He takes his time. He has a very unique model. I would invite anyone to come down and look at how he teaches the class. He has a screen on the wall, right? And he projects one of the platforms called IXL, and he conducts his general instruction that way. But then if you go walk into his classroom, I mean, how you organize your classroom too is very telling on your teaching strategy. And we change the structure from time to time. Teachers do. That's what we do. And it's good that we do. But if you go into his class, you'll see that he has a few chairs around him at any given time because he gives that one-to-one instruction. We operate on a block schedule. So that's how that one teacher is using his class to reinforce those math skills. And then, of course, on Fridays, like today's Friday, January 23rd. And so my vice principal is implementing CHIC Friday, but with the opportunity for students who are falling behind, especially upper division students, those expecting to graduate, to go see their teachers today, as opposed to getting in the water and paddling that canoe or playing volleyball or basketball, to go in and see the English teacher so you get that business comms class out of the way.
Okay.
And that's a difference too. Our class, our school, I'm sure other charters have elected to use a non-traditional curriculum. Like we have business comms as opposed to American literature. Okay. When you go to college prep schools, they have those types of emphases, right, in their respective curricula, because they want you to get to a different place to prepare you for college, for example. Sure. Advanced placement and international baccalaureate programs are all wonderful programs for those schools. Our school is a career technical education program, so we choose to implement an English course or business communications course that I don't think even mentions American Lit, at least not in that one course for juniors.
Understood. So why is the charter school model better? You said it's agile.
Sure.
What are you addressing relative to the traditional education system?
Right on. Thanks. It's a great question. So if I was to draw 3 concentric circles, in the center could be that core curriculum. We all do that. The DOE does that. The private school sector, hopefully the homeschools, and us, and we in the charters, we're all going to should address those core curriculum needs: English, math, science, social, a liberal arts curriculum. Okay. I think the charter school system is more effective than compared to a state system because you have the opportunity. It's school choice. It's really allowing a student from GIGO. We have 17 of the 19 municipalities represented at Career Tech, right? We have GIGO kids. We have Agate kids, of course, Humata kids, Barragata kids, etc. And so we allow students, the law allows for students to come down from GIGO all the way to Hoggett and hopefully Central Guam when we open our annex to take courses that's aligned with their family values and hopefully their occupational interests, etc. So that's one. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that the state system, in this case DOE, is district, right? So you have to be within district to attend or petition for an exception. So we work, we're unique in that sense. Also the flexibility. I mentioned this, and I'll continue to sing this. The flexibility of charters to manage their operations independent of a monolithic state system is so important. To turn on a dime.
Sure.
Right? To turn on a dime. To require, for example, my faculty to take a sexual harassment certificate training by January 15th. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm still not certain if for example, a DOE teacher was there, and if I decided tomorrow, because it was becoming a problem in some schools, to require them to take a sex ed certificate program, does that violate a guideline or rule, a board and union provision? I'm not in that space anymore, so I don't have that readily available. But the point is, I decided that we're going to be a safe school, build upon our safe school reputation. Mm-hmm. Small class sizes, We're engaged. Now I want our teachers to be trained in sexual harassment. First aid CPR, we just trained 5 teachers. First aid CPR, riot control, mental health preparedness, all of those things. And then I might have to talk to legal counsel, but I'm going to request that my faculty, we publish our police clearance, court clearance, drug tests, and all our certificates relative to affirming the fact that we're a safe school. That is a huge factor when determining where you're going to send your child, and we want to take advantage of that and let parents know, we got you. We got your back.
I see.
There are many more. What makes the charter a little more effective, in my opinion? Not effective. I'm trying to phrase this in a way that doesn't take anything away from another system. I think what makes charters effective is the fact that we have public subsidy.
Okay.
Not everybody can afford to go to a private
You mean
school.
it's access?
Tax-based monies, right. But, we receive public money for every student that comes to our school to the tune of $7,800, which is nothing compared with, it's not close to what a state system gets at $13,000 to $15,000. We're funded at about 60%. Now, some folks already have spoken in the mass media, as captured in our recent article, that's a potential savings. I'm not necessarily going to support that we continue to allow more charters to exist, and at that rate, there is a breaking point. There's a threshold. 7,800 is not enough to deliver more services. If DOE was for example, at 13,000, and let's not take anything away from
Is that what it is, though, about 13,000?
I think it's about 13 or 14 public money,
Yes.
Public local tax revenue. I didn't even include the conversation about federal monies. I didn't even include the conversation about special legislation that pays for long-term bonds for construction of new buildings. We don't have the privilege to use the government or the people's assets to build our campus or make those kinds of improvements. I have that breakdown. It's going to be a wonderful talking point in another podcast.
Sure.
But you set that aside, just the public appropriation of 7,800 versus 13,000 some. Okay, let's go low, 13,000. Do the math, right? Then you look at other schools that do an exceptional job with even less, private schools, and other private schools charge a lot more. My point is, not everybody can afford a private education.
Sure, but I like the choice model.
I do too.
Right. And so say big thinking, right? Everybody gets $13,000 a year, right? Everyone just by tax break or whatever, government subsidy, gets $13,000, and they can go to public school, private school, charter school, et cetera. Do you think that model would work?
With some caution. So as much as I am an advocate for charter schools, and I would caution shocking the system.
Mm-hmm.
We got to refrain from shocking the pants off the system so that we are in the ICU. I'll give you an example. If we did that right now, you gave a family $13,000
Per child.
to go wherever you want.
Yeah.
When 1,000 kids leave the state system, what are you supposed to do with all those teachers and school aides and administrators who are no longer needed for that system? So with proper planning, I really believe it can work. I don't believe that we should dismantle DOE. If anything, I think we need to take a hard look and a more radical approach to revamping it.
Exactly. You can opt into the existing system, but you can tweak it so there's more agility, more flexibility.
Absolutely. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it again, especially in the road ahead. This happens to be an election year for senators and a governor and a lieutenant governor. And there's a strong public appetite for more charters. I don't necessarily believe that's going to be the solution. We're changing the players, but not the game. You got to change the system. And one of those things could be, for example, and this is not a very popular thought, I'm sure, but declassification of the principal corps. I was at DOE when a legislator proposed that we get rid of the associate superintendents and create a deputy class of leaders. And I thought that was so important. I was with DOE and we endorsed it. The late Louis Regis endorsed it because the ability to implement your executive vision becomes strangled when those below you who don't want to cooperate find every opportunity to block you from implementing those changes.
It's systemic.
Right. So what they did is when they got rid of that and they created the deputy class, you allowed the chief executive now to pull in his or her top 5 senior managers. Okay. Now, what more at the school site? Okay, so I am an at-will employee, right? Thankfully, I have the privilege of serving yet another year as a principal. Because what happens if I was mediocre or worse? What happens if I didn't effectuate change? I'll give you a very easy example. What happens if I allowed the grass to grow 18 inches? Have you been around the island and looked at some of these institutions? I get it. Some of them are large. They can't maintain the grass. Come to my school. You won't see the grass more than 8 to 10 inches because that really gets my blood to boil. And me and my team will get out there and cut our own grass. We don't wait for the mayor's council. We don't wait for some benevolent contributing factor like a military detachment to come and cut my grass for me. My bush cutter is down there right now.
Sure.
Right? So we have to buy bush cutter. I need my bush cutter back. But we get down there and we do our own grass. That's the difference between management and leadership. And then you plan for someone to do it properly on a regular basis with satisfaction. Okay? So those are the kind of flexibilities and comparisons and contrasts that we can make between a private school. Private schools do it all the time. They do a great job. And now charters and hopefully DOE. So back to my point. I'm not saying get rid of principals. What I'm saying is in a state system, pay them premium. Pay them even more than they're making if it's not at par. I believe that because this is the hardest job I've ever had, for the record. And pay them premium, but put them on a performance contract. But this idea of principal for life and you're not effectuating change, I don't subscribe to that. I don't. Now being a principal, I see the light, right? You're not there to manage. We got many managers. I hire managers. You're there to effectuate change, and that requires a certain level of leadership and initiative. And that's one way I think, that would empower someone like a superintendent and a deputy over time to say, you know what, you're up for renewal. I really appreciate you for having served as principal, Mr. Castro, but I'm looking for a different kind of principal. So I'm going to go ahead and retreat you back to the classroom because you're a great teacher. You wouldn't have got promoted to principal if you weren't a good teacher. But not to fire people, but to move them around, which is another flexibility of charge. I move people around. I don't fire people. We move them around to areas where they can prosper.
But so, okay, if you were put in that situation, do you still think you can effectuate change with the existing structure, like the teachers union, the teachers aides, all that apparatus that kind of is, because my understanding of that structure is the aides are supposed to supplement the things that are negotiated out of the teachers' contracts. You have to fill the gap, right? And then,
sure.
What is that?
Sure. Board union agreements serve a purpose. I value what unions bring to the table, and they're really a powerful tool against abuse. Mm-hmm. That's the point. Agreed. The point is we're going to protect your interests so that nobody abuses you from the higher ups. Hey, while you're at it, here's an example of abuse. While you're at it, while you're teaching, if you have prep, right? So teachers use prep time to, grade and prepare for the next day, etc. Mm-hmm. While you're at it at prep, can you water the plants?
Yeah.
Like for the whole campus.
Exactly.
That's abuse. So I see how board union contracts and stipulations protect our people from being abused. But at the same time, in my school, I don't necessarily need to tell my teachers to do that, right? I'm a principal, I'm a tutor, I'm a grass cutter, I'm a swimmer, I'm an uncertified lifeguard. We do it because we actually give a damn. We're not going to allow it to just fester, right? This idea of, that's not my job. That doesn't exist in my school. Mm-hmm. And if it does, we attempt to correct that.
But that's systemic apathy in a lot of ways too, right?
Such as life.
Yeah. And I think when you run into a broken system over and over and again, you do get that.
Yeah. I got one more though. Sure. I got one more that I got actually a few more, but here's another one to consider. I was once asked in the last 8 months, let's give it a broader window so no one looks around too closely. In the last 2 to 18 months, to be a senior manager at DOE, right, to help with certain things. And I had some bold statements, and I wasn't ready to leave career. I'm not ready to leave career tech, but I did proffer some things that if I was to take them up on that opportunity to serve the department again, I would advocate for outsourcing those administrative services that are not central to the classroom. Agreed. When I was at the department, or when I was in senior leadership in other institutions, it never really dawned on me that could be such a burden to an institution, whether it's at the school level, what more the district, and then the state, right? So now that I'm a principal at a charter school, with a reduced amount of an appropriation to do everything they do at that dollar amount, I have to save money. So I choose not to have a contract. My point is, you can probably get a better service at a lower price point if you outsource it. Certain things can be outsourced. Now, well, what about the abuse of this contract? Well, terminate. Unilateral termination is not a board union protected agreement. If a vendor does not provide satisfactory service, you terminate unilaterally and move on. In a classified system of employment, you can't do that.
Right.
Right. And so I'm not saying terminate classified employees. What I'm saying is, if you can inspire the mood and effectuate change, it's time to look at restructuring and seeing what third parties can provide the same service at a lesser amount, more efficiently and effectively.
And that's kind of what I was getting at in terms of leadership and being able to effectuate change, because, one of the hammers that you have is at-will employment. Yeah. But you don't necessarily have that in, the systems that are built because, the sense of equity and some bureaucracy.
Sure. I was at a private school. We didn't make enrollment. Not when I say we, I didn't say, not me, but the institution. It was just a market forces for this private school. When enrollment dipped to a certain number, it didn't matter that the head of school had a Harvard degree, that his number 2 advisor as a director had a Harvard doctorate, and that I have a Harvard master's. It didn't matter. What happened was I was laid off. Mm-hmm. That's the reality of the market. At a charter, similarly, my boss has the privilege to give me my walking papers. And so when you're faced with those kinds of pressures to perform at the highest levels of leadership, it's either show up and put out or move on.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And not to say that pressure doesn't exist, but it exists in a different way.
Yeah. And again, I'm not knocking any other system. The private school system, especially the parochial schools, the religious schools, have an advantage. They have an advantage because they get to implement their form of religiosity. St. John's has their form of Christianity, Father Duenas in the Archdiocese theirs, and Harvest theirs, and so forth. That fits with their model, their value system that families want in their lives. And there's the case law is clear that you can't commingle those public funds to teach, for example, Catholicism, right, using public money, especially federal money. So I understand that. I accept that, even though I'm a Roman Catholic. I accept that, and we play by the rules. But they have their niche. Similarly, they attract a different demographic. Let's be clear, right? That system, some of those private systems, are geared to produce students of a certain caliber for a certain pathway.
Yes.
When you offer advanced placement and international baccalaureate, it comes with all the baggage and bells and whistles.
Yes.
You have to perform. But at Career Tech, although we're going to pilot our first advanced placement program this term, that is not the center of our universe. We're going to introduce it so there's some option for rigor for my more advanced kids. And by the way, that's another misgiving of some charters, what people perceive to be charters to be about, that these are kids, at least Career Tech, who, when I first took this job, someone said, hey, you're going to that school where the kids are good with their hands? And I'm thinking to myself, gihin is so cool, cool. What is she? These kids are good with their hands. And then I thought back, now we're going into this misconception that blue-collar, vocational, technical CTE work is somehow lesser than white-collar work. I mean, I was saying to myself,
sure,
I couldn't help but be offended, right? No, it's not that at all. As a matter of fact, if anyone's following the literature, these students who come out with these skilled technical skills like technology, plumbing, and carpentry are the next class of millionaires. By the way, not all technology, just for the record, because a lot of AI is just revolutionizing the industry right now. But they haven't found AI to be adept yet to handle our plumbing and our HVAC needs, and that's a good thing for our students. And so, now these kids, they do require some rigor. Some of them want to be psychologists and pilots, and I'm taking 2 of them today, as a matter of fact, to Tizen, to visit some of the small craft airplanes there, because a person came yesterday who's the leader of the Women in Aviation program she started here on Guam, and I'm excited about that.
Nice. But so I agree, and I agree with the idea of choice and the idea that systemically there's some issues. But I'm also interested in once they get to the workforce, like, what kind of life are they going to have? And one of the things I'm interested in your background is your government experience. And so, we've been having these conversations around like the government system, permitting,
Sure.
all these systems. And I'm wondering, you were at OTEC.
I was.
For a while. And I'm wondering, and you were at BSP too.
I was.
Right. And so do you think the government has a good and effective data strategy presently?
I haven't seen the latest strategic plan. What I do know is my former colleague Frank Lahan had a tremendous vision, and he really was bringing a comprehensive approach to technology in general, whether it was hardware, software, the soft services, data management. I mean, we had lots of ideas and lots of plans. The issue, I think, with the government, probably across all other governments, I've definitely seen it in CNMI as well in Guam, is funding.
Okay.
Is funding, and also to some extent, depending on the nature of the beast and what their visions are, opening it up to the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we could do better. I just don't know where they're at right now. When I was there was a move to consolidate a lot of that data and create a big data center for all Gov Guam. I'm not sure where they're at now. They could still be siloed. That idea of big data, it was not new to me. I didn't create that concept, but it was something I wanted to implement as BSP in collaboration with the CTO, so that especially authorities throughout the government, all three branches, can go to a central repository and pull this information out and make meaningful sense of it, right, using whatever scripts they needed to for the type of data. And you were there. We were talking before we went on the show about how you saw we pulled like information from different agencies together to offer it uniquely on a particular app. And unfortunately, over time, it just fell by the wayside for whatever reason. There were probably other priorities. But I'm going back to the premise of charters and my operational philosophy, whether it's charters or even DOE or Gov Guam, when I return to serve, that I think that Gov Guam can do certain core things really well, just like certain schools can do certain things really well. But in the areas that are moving too rapidly, where the human infrastructure cannot keep up with the industry, I think it's best to leave it to the private sector for that innovation and the provisioning of those services, whether it's software or hardware or consultation.
And that's where I am, because that's what got me to this thread in the conversation is outsourcing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just don't understand how we don't have a consultant. I don't understand that. Tell me about how policy is set at OTEC, because my thing would be, I would think you would get an outside consultant, like a government structure, and have them, advise, okay, these are the systems and structure that you need to maintain. You'd want to get a data scientist or, someone in there to look at, okay, these are the patterns that we want to identify, these are the segments we want to identify. These are the data points that we want to take in, so we can measure our performance and we can plan to a place. Is that happening now? Has that ever happened?
Gosh, so the term data scientist wasn't a real term.
Okay.
But I don't know what OTEC is doing now. I just haven't plugged into Gov Guam. I've been in the charter system. My head's in that game. But ideally, right, like any major strategic planning initiative, whether it's education or technology, you would think that you would consult the industry experts. And that's what I did, at least when it came to developing the Land Mobile app. I went to realtors. I don't know anything about realty and what realtors do or need. What I knew is that DLM had a lot of data, and BSP had a lot of data, and DOA had some financial data. And there's just so many agencies that have a lot of data that you can layer, that if an outside entity, which is what we consulted, could put it all together into an app that Tun Maria and Tun Jose can access, or better, the private sector, in order for them to provide a service or an offering for someone to buy a house, for example. Believe it or not, I mean, you could speak to this. This is what you guys do. But what was really exciting for me, I mean, you would think it insignificant, but it actually came up. Someone wanted to buy a house and actually asked, like, where are the nearest fire hydrants? So I'm thinking, damn, fire hydrants, like, what does it have to do with the price of rice in China? I don't know. But for that family, where the nearest fire hydrant in, let's say, Barragata was important to them. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the slightest clue. So we consulted DPW, right? And so I went, wow, imagine if all of that was at your fingertips. I wouldn't need a realtor. I can go ahead and open this mobile app and say, boom, that's where my dog's going to pee, for example. I don't think that's the reason, but the point is they would make a informed decision where they would want to open a business or build a home with their family.
Sure, and I'll push back, in terms of, like the profession, like not wanting the professional, not needing the professional, because the professional is only supplemented by this information. Because part of the problem with the professional and the part of the realtor, the reputation of the realtor is tarnished by them perpetuating bad information, and bad information is perpetuated systemically.
Yeah.
And some people fill the gaps with their imagination and misrepresentation, right? But generally, most people want to give you the right information and want to help you do what you need to do.
Sure. I mean, the old adage, junk in is junk out.
Sure.
So it's been a while. I used to really be in the technology space, and but we know the importance of data integrity.
Right.
That much I can recall. And so you should also have people who are constantly going back to look at the integrity of the information being generated. To me, that's the role of government especially.
Yes.
Because they're the ones who verify and protect the integrity of the information being put out there for this community.
And so in that structure, right? Like, where do you get your data? Because, from as a charter school, I think you need good data to kind of perpetuate your programs, and
Sure.
and you need to know what the data is, in terms of the marketplace and what the desires are. How do you find that?
That's a good question. Is some of my secrets. I think any responsible manager would look to industry publications. I'll give you a few easy ones. The Chronicle of Higher Education front loads me with a lot of information about what academia is doing, and it's a very small glimpse of where I'm at. There's Charter School Weekly. There's the American Career and Technical Education Organization. So I read those, and frankly, I even pieces that may not fit with my politics. The New York Times and other mainstream publications, old media, if you will, they put out stuff that is very informative. So it's important, in my opinion, if you're going to stay ahead of the game and remain competitive, you have to go and look for information that can inform decision-making, and from credible sources like the Chronicle, like Ed Weekly, like Charter School Weekly, because I'm in the charter school space now. In other times, I would look at International Educator and education-type publications when I was at St. John's, for example. But yeah, gosh, anyone who's a responsible manager doesn't read trade, what you would call trade publications, you're at an extreme disadvantage. And I would also say that if you don't think that education is a competitive market space, you are mistaken. There are only so many students on this island and in any jurisdiction, and I am bent on putting forth the best possible product, which is the outcome. My output is in my students. My outcomes are in their behaviors and their workplace skills. So I want to continue to chase those so that I have such a critical mass of kids who want to come. I can't accept them all. I actually have a wait list. Mm-hmm. And the only way to do that is to deliver a superior service as compared to others in the market space. And it's not charter versus charter. It's my school versus the world. That's how I look at it. Mm-hmm. That's how I look at it.
And so when you say that, I hear context. Mm-hmm. You're getting context from these publications, right? But where's the signal? How do you know what your demographics are? How do you know what segments exist in your market? It's good because
Sure.
really you're shooting in the dark, right? You're using your insight to time a cycle and create a cycle and establish like a pattern, but you don't really have anything like, segmented
Sure.
data that you can use to action that, do you?
So the Bureau of Statistics and Plans does a wonderful job compiling a lot of data across the board throughout the government of Guam. I would consult that. It gives you some baseline data like population demographics, tells you a little bit about the economy. It's a very informative piece. I would use that. For me personally, I know who my kids are. I use my own internal data over time. Mm-hmm. Some researchers would consider it longitudinal. I don't think it's longitudinal yet. I've only been in the seat for 3 years. So longitudinal data is data that comes over time, and then you analyze that in terms of my ethnicity, my gender, what types of kids, male, female, what their ethnicities are. And soon, I can't say that we're at a certain level where I'm happy to talk about it because it's a gap. and we're going to work on it this academic year, looking at their academic performance, which many would argue is the crux of the educational enterprise. And that's probably where we differ philosophically. I don't believe that academics is the crux of the education enterprise. There's a lot more to academics.
I agree.
I have kids who don't come to school, and when they come, I am so happy. I tell my son, put your head down. You had a bad night. Put your head down. You'll be all right. You're safe. But you can't sleep all day, all right? When you come to, let's talk about it and how we can move you forward, right? There's that psychosocial dimension I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Enrichment, having emotional intelligence. They don't understand that concept. But in terms of how do you interact with people, how you discern and not react a certain way, or how do you act a certain way to elicit somebody else's response. Those kinds of things, hard to teach. You have to immerse them in an environment where we can actually practice that. And I like to think in a small school like Career Tech on Hagat Bay, that's one of the things we do best. We actually love our kids.
I hear that, and it's consistent in what you're saying, and it's clear that that's your family down there. Mm-hmm. Tell me about what it looks like 5 years from now.
Career Tech or education in general?
Well, where you want to be, right? So you have you've said a couple times here that you're going to be running, right? Am I misinterpreting that?
I want to serve so badly, because I have some clear ideas that I want to see implemented that would improve the overall state of education for all the educational players, private, public, and charters.
Okay. Yeah. And so with that, that's 2 terms, right? From now?
5 years,
5 years, yeah. Right? And so presuming you've hit your benchmarks, what does Guam look like, presuming you've been able to get adoption of these charter schools?
Sure.
And why have we gotten there? What things have changed to get us there?
Let me speak let me forecast into the future so we don't discount what's been done or what's not being done.
Okay.
5 years from now, I would like to be the CEO of Career Tech High, CEO and head of schools of Career Tech High, Career Tech Institute, and head of schools. I see us on 4 different campuses throughout the Micronesia region. I have a population of 500 kids. My chairman knows that in order for me to run, I'm going to be the CEO. This August, we're going to launch Career Tech Institute, which is a post-secondary boutique college. I would like to be a senior advisor to a governor, maybe even the head of a commission that sets into motion a strategic plan. You see, I was part many years ago. I was the Tentalgu, right? If you know, I was actually a scribe, if you want to call it that, for a larger planning organization in anticipation of what was known as a civilian military task force. What a wonderful experience. And I was a representative of St. John's, and many of us, they invited all of us to the table to talk about enrollment trends, to talk about the challenges associated with what is now considered the military buildup. At that time, it was CMTF. And it was amazing how much you can glean from each other about what's not being done, what's to come, and how to prepare for that. And we're lacking that mechanism that sets into motion a strategic planning activity. Now, I'm not saying tell me what to do at my school. I'm saying, can you help me identify 4 major points that we would like to achieve as an island, and how can we all be a part of this conversation, or at least be aware? Okay, right now, we don't have that. And that's not a fault of this administration or the Board of Education or the legislature. I think we all just need to come back, find that catalyst, create it. And I would love to do that and be a part of it, because we're having conversations, but many times alone. The charter community is doing a great job. SIFA, iLearn, Guahan, Chief Harrell, Mount Carmel, BTAX. We engage in conversations regularly about introduced legislation that's problematic and about opportunities. I'll give you examples. One clean example is going to be, we would love to pilot our own transportation system, right? We want to pilot our own busing system to service our constituencies. And frankly, we want to do what's not being done, the greater community that we serve. That's right. Right. So we bought a van 2 weeks ago. We got a van gifted to our school as a Guam bomb. I'm going to transform that van with the help of my team from a Guam bomb to a classroom on wheels. And come August, when I hire this new guy or individual, he's going to give me a fleet of 3 vans. And when I continue to collaborate with my colleagues in the charter community, and should I have the privilege to serve as a senator, I will fund a pilot transportation system for charters to prove that they can do it and do it better. You see, because if I had a magic wand, I would say GMTA, DPW, charters, and privates, and homeschoolers Let's sit down, Fen, and figure out how we can provide the same service to all of these entities. Right now, it costs me $250 to take my kids on a field trip between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. Right? DPW is not capping me because they're bad people. Their economic reality is such that they can only provide that service from 8 to 12. Now, why do I got to stop my educational learning opportunity in the field to 12 p.m.? Well, I went to the private sector, and boy, are they that much more expensive. They're like between $600 and $800 for a service that takes me to 2 p.m. Sure. So I'm in a quandary. So how do I figure that out? I don't have the answer yet. What I have is the desire to work with people. We're going to figure it out. Mark my words, we will figure it out, because that's what we do in the charter family. And I'm hoping that the same fervor can be applied in the years to come, where we're all at the table, devoid of your own personal indifferences and differences in partisanship and other kinds of philosophies that divide a people. We're going to be here to talk about how to improve education in general.
What do you think the leading industry is going to be in 5 years?
Oh, gosh, I have no clue, but I hope that the number one export to an extent would be our intellectual capital. I'm hoping that we can create more soft services where we could provide intellectual property to serve the greater Micronesia region. That is the foundation I'm not an economist, but as I understand, that's one of the leading exports of our country is our intellectual capital. And so why couldn't we do it as a geopolitical hub for Micronesia? And frankly, everything west of California and east of Japan. That's who we are as a Guahan community, as a Marianas. And I really believe that we need to work on that and maybe even develop some more exports, which I thought Guido was doing an excellent job teasing that out and fleshing it out more. What can we export that actually services people or gives them good stuff like Denancy? Like that is a global phenomenon. Like people love hot stuff. And then you got this sriracha thing. Man, everyone has a grandma or auntie who can do a Finidini Denancy that's even better than sriracha. And yet that person's a billionaire. So we didn't miss the bus. It's never too late. And you have really cool people like the Fajarins are doing that, and Marvin Crisostomo. And I really would like to see more investments in that so that they can take our product and the taste of the Marianas to a global market. Those kinds of little things really matter. And I think people can make a nice living off of that.
What's a big idea you think we're not ready for?
Oh, man, you asked me something and I had my one cup of coffee. A big idea we're not ready for. I think AI is going to hit us harder than anyone can prognosticate about. America hasn't even fully felt the recoil. A lot of jobs will be lost to AI and technology services like that. And so we need a brace for that. I don't even know what that looks like in the future. What I do know is a lot of people will be hurt from it if they don't retool. And that goes back to your very first question about what is it that we can do for our kids to prepare them for the future workforce. I think one thing that hasn't changed throughout time is the need to be a critical thinker. We need to teach everyone, our kids, everyone now in the current workforce, how to think critically, because that's the only thing that technology cannot replace is the human mind and spirit. They can do almost anything else just as good, almost anything else. But when it comes time to this, not a million computers can match up against what's between your ears.
No, that's real. There's this thing in La La Land where there's a song like "Here's to the Dreamers" and all that stuff, right? And it talks about kind of like her aunt was like crazy and she just jumped into the river and no one knew why. But I think that it's that crazy town that people have, the idea that they can do the impossible.
Yeah.
And then other people kind of follow that and that perpetuates. And that I think that's a differentiator. So I think that is an important point.
Perhaps the only thing that makes that person crazy is that we don't see what's in his or her head, and it could be profound.
No, they could be crazy. I'll accept that. But, I can learn from the crazy guy just as much as I can learn from
Absolutely. And that's education too, man. There's no bad idea in our school system. We love listening to the kids, and we hope good things come from Career Tech and other charters.
Yeah, well, Senator, Principal, I think it's been a great conversation. I'm really appreciative of your time here with us. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with or say?
I think that we have a really hardworking group of professionals at DOE. I believe that I was there. I was a DOE teacher too at one time. And they work really hard, and many of them are just burnt out. And they're burnt out because we're carrying the burden of society. In one child, that is a microcosm of society, from the family to the street they live on, to the village, to the whole expanse of Guam. So when a child goes into the classroom, imagine there's 20 of them, in some classes 30 of them, and yet the teacher carries this on his or her shoulder. So they don't get enough credit for all that they do to even show up. And so I want to thank all the educators for showing up and doing their part. And to the rest of the leadership, folks like me in management and leadership, I wish you the best. I encourage you to innovate. I encourage you to challenge the status quo without fear of reprisal. Challenge the status quo. That's the only way it's going to change. And bring your bright ideas to the table and take advantage of the fact that you have a new superintendent and new set of deputies to really effectuate change in DOE. As for charters and privates, God bless you and all that you do, because we do it for less. And I'm looking forward to really positive things coming out in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate
Will really kind of opened my eyes in terms of number one. He said the average cost per student is about $13,000. I probably could have learned that from the internet, but that's kind of the average cost of public school tuition. It's actually more for some schools. So imagine if you had a choice, where would you send your kids and what would you want them to learn? And now you have some optionality, but will that currently perpetuate? I don't know. But what I will say is we do need to look at the way the education is being deployed as a service here. And it's a right. And we really need that as lifeblood to our business community. And if we're not getting it, we're going to have big problems. And we're going to have big problems if you don't continue to question what's happening out there and ask the big questions and demand answers. And we hope that you do it with us here on Data Points. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing all our content on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please send us questions, and we look forward to you joining us again soon.